So today we are going to practice something called a washing breath. So it's really simple to do, it's deeply de-stressing, and it really just helps to bring you back into the present moment. So you can do this laying down. So we lay down like we usually do, just on your back with the knees bent, soles of the feet into the floor. Just take a moment to relax, make sure that you're warm enough, make sure that you're comfortable. And just take a moment to connect with your body. Now, when there's a lot going on around us, now we are, we have eyes on the front, and we have, we have ears that can hear. We have all these senses. We have these 5 senses that can that help us to process our external world. And this is a good thing, because obviously we need to process our external world, but it's also can be a little bit detrimental, because when we're very, very taken with the external, as we are at the moment, there's a lot going on around us and has been for some time now. When we're very taken with the external, when we're hearing things that may be, causing us some stress, when we're seeing things that may be causing us some stress, we get a little bit disconnected from our bodies. We get a little bit disconnected from the ground, our home, our environment. So this practice is designed to bring you back into your body and back down to the ground. So we're just relaxing. So we're just starting by laying on our back, knees bent, soles of the feet into the ground. And just taking time to feel the weights of the body and your breath. So we feel the feet, just picking the toes up, spreading the toes. We feel the back of the hips, nice and heavy. And we want to feel that there's a gap at the base of the spine. We do have a lumbar curve. And we feel the back of the chest, the shoulder blades. Now use the weight of your arms if you need to. The arms are up over the body. And you can let the arms drop back into the sockets. You can bring the hands onto the collarbones and just feel that the collarbones can smooth towards the outer edges of the shoulders. This helps to broaden and soften your chest. And then the eyes can sink into the back of the head, and the back of the head rests on the ground. So we feel the weights of the body. Heavy bones, heavy muscles. And we're going to bring the hands just onto the front and sides of your ribs. And we can breathe into the hands. And just noticing where you might be holding tension in your body when you're breathing. So as you breathe in, notice that the ribs can expand into the palms of your hands. We're very interested in the ribs going sideways rather than forwards. So when we breathe in, it's like concertina. We're sending the ribs out to either side of the room. And when you breathe out, the ribs can come back in towards the spine. And just noticing how your breath moves your spine. So as you breathe in, We've got that expansive, light and lifting feeling to the front of the body. And as you breathe out, the front of the body is invited back into the back of the body. And we can soften back. And again, just notice places in your body where the breath isn't keen to go. We feel our breath like water. And this is why it's like a breath wash, because the breath comes in and it washes through the body down towards the feet. And then when you breathe out, the breath washes back out through the mouth, through the upper part of the body. And we sink down into the ground. And we just notice that undulation. There isn't anything to do here. There might be a lot of movement in your body. There might only be a very little movement in your body, and that everything is fine. You might find that your breath gets stuck up around the shoulders. You might find that your breath gets trapped in around the hips somewhere, that the hips don't want to move as much as they could, or the shoulders aren't as soft as they could be. And everything is fine. So we hold tension in unique areas of our body. It's unique to us. There's no hard and fast rule. So we take the arms up over your body, just over the chest. The palms face each other with the elbows, pointy part of the elbows looking down towards the thighs. The long arm bones can drop back into their sockets. We feel the shoulder blades more. We want 2 flat shoulder blades on the floor if we can. So we feel the weight of the feet. And as you breathe in, we're going to take the arms up just towards the top of your mat. Keep the front of your chest in towards the spine. Remember that side to side movement of the breath. And the breath out, we're going to make circles with the arms. So the breath out takes the arms out, round and down. The arms don't need to be on the floor. In fact, it's advised that they're not. It's too stretchy for the shoulders. You breathe in, you just let the arms feel like there's weight in the hands. So your movement is coming from underneath the arms, side of the ribs. And then out and round and down. So again, just notice where you run into resistance in the shoulders. We want that lovely roll on the collarbone. Space into the top of the shoulders. Space into the side of the neck. Just a couple more here in your own time. Point with the index fingers as your arms come out, round and down. You'll feel the stretch on the front of your chest. And we're coming back to the center. We're just resting the hands onto the front of the thighs. And we're just picking the toes up and rolling the feet onto their outer edges and rolling the feet onto the inner edges. The knees stay still. We want the feet to move independently of the shins, and we create space in the ankles. Now we hold a lot of tension in the front of the ankle. If we're perceiving something that is stressful, we have stress in the jaw, and then that comes all the way down the front of the body and is translated into the front of the ankles as well. So we get a lot of tension held in the front of the ankles as well. So we get that nice rolling movement of the feet. Feet move independently of the shins. You'll feel the shin bones start to move, which creates space in the back of the knees. And we want space in the knees so that the shins can move independently of the thighs. And you'll feel the thigh bones moving because thigh bones move independently of the pelvis. So we really start to soften, relax and release the tissues of the legs. You might be thinking, well, how does this release stress? Well, actually, you can't throw the stone into the pond and just get ripples on one side. So we look at the body as a functioning whole. And we relax and release the tissues all the way throughout the body, and that's deeply de-stressing and relaxing for our nervous system, for our brain, and obviously we feel the physical tension as we move through. We're bringing the hands onto the front of the hips. Hips stay nice and still. Back of the hips nice and heavy on the ground. We're going to roll the left foot out onto its outer edge. It's not a big movement. The knee goes out to the side, but the hips don't move. So we've got that lovely anchoring down through the back of the pelvis, and then the big toe joint inside of the heel comes down and brings the knee back to the center. We try on the other side. So these are your pelvic stabilizer muscles on the inside of the pelvic bowl. This also helps the brain to reconnect the feet into the ground. So we just go from side to side. The foot is your prime driver. Long little toe side gets pulled down into the ground, which takes the knee out to the side. Big toe joint inside of the heel pulls you back to the center. And just noticing, as I say, we store stress in the hips. It's part of our fight and flight response. The muscles in the pelvic floor, the low spine and the inside of the thighs, all part of our fight and flight response. So it might be nice to create some movement here, some relaxation here. We're going to finish on the right side. And we'll come back to the center. We're going to bring the feet together. Feel the long little toe sides of the feet get pulled down into the ground. Feel the back of the pelvis pulled down into the ground. And we just let the long leg bones get sucked back into the deep waist. It's very tempting here, particularly if we're tight on the inside of the thighs, to just let the legs flop out and maybe have a bit of a bounce just to stretch these muscles out. But we want that integrity to the legs. And that's where the connection of the feet is very key, and the connection of the back of the pelvis is important. If we pull down through the feet, we could lift the back of the pelvis off the ground, and that draws the legs back through the hips, back into the deep waist. And this is the process of reconnecting our limbs back to the solar plexus, back to the spine. And that's also important when we're stressed. We can feel, as I said before, a little bit disconnected, a little bit disjointed, a little bit discombobulated, all those things. So as we pull the limbs back into the spine and we pull our bodies back into the ground, it's deeply relaxing for us. Feels like coming home. We're going to bring the knees back to the center, re-establish that connection down through the feet, and then feel behind the balls of the feet. Feel the sink of the heel, and remember that's the taproot heel, so that's the front of your snooker ball heel coming down into the ground. And it's this pull of the feet down into the ground that just allows the pelvis to tilt. So the hips can roll in towards you and they can roll away from you. It's all driven by the feet. We can breathe into the tummy. We can make the tummy nice and round. As we breathe out, tummy sinks back towards the spine. We'll get this lovely long, low spine, and the tail goes towards the heels. And of course, this takes you eventually, this becomes your bridge posture. So feel that lovely tilt away. And then if it's nice to just keep going, feet get pulled down into the ground. Tummy comes back towards the spine, tail goes towards the heels. And if we keep pulling down through the balls of the feet, the knees go towards the end of your mat, and your bridge just naturally occurs here. It's a spontaneous occurrence caused by being pulled down into the ground, not pushing away from the ground. And this is interesting because this practice changes our mind on how we move, but it also changes our mind on many other things as well. When we don't like things, we want to push them away. If we want to achieve something, we feel that we need to push. Where we want to come into our lovely bridge pose, we feel like we need to push the floor away, but actually there's a gentler approach. It's a gentler approach, not any less strong. We don't confuse ourselves with the wishy-washy. That pull down into the ground, that pull back to center is very strong. Because for those of us that have practiced this way for some time, actually this becomes, a deeper bridge pose where the arms can come up over the head, the hands come down to the floor, and it turns into our wheel pose, which is quite an advanced yoga posture. But we don't confuse ourselves with the fact that taking a softer approach or a more integrative approach is any less strong. And it's the same with things that we don't like. Sometimes if we can pull those into ourselves and become okay with them, we get stronger as a result. So maybe with your bridge pose, if we pause here when the hips are up, we can bring the arms over the body again. Long arm bones drop back into their sockets. We can breathe, we can smile to ourselves. Your breathing and your smiling is the measure of your movement. If you're here with your jaw clenched, you're trying too hard. Feel the ground underneath you. Point with the index fingers. And if it's nice to have the arms up towards the top of your mat, a deeper stretch is there when the spine rolls back down to the ground. We get deeper stretch down through the upper part of the spine, sides of the ribs, down into the hips. And then the arms can come up and over to the floor beside you, and we start the process again. The pull of the feet, the tilt of the pelvis. The spine is long, like the rope that is being pulled out of the water. It's heavy and drawing down towards the ground. We go up because we're pulled down, not because we have to press ourselves away from the ground. Arms go up over the head, just wherever is comfortable. The breath out sinks you back into the ground. And the arms can come back up and over. This is good. We have a final bridge here, feet. Make sure we've got those big toes and inside of the heels down into the ground. Keeps the central core active and working. Should feel the inside of the legs, not just the glutes. You should feel the inside of the spine, not just the outer edges of the body. And we roll back down. And the arms can come back up and over. This is good. We can take the elbows out to the side. We feel the feet. Again, when you point with your index fingers, that drops the shoulder blades into the ground. It also gives you space on the front of the chest. We leave the shoulders on the ground and the feet get pulled down into the ground. So it's long little toe side as the knees come over to one side. Long little toe side on the underside foot. Big toe joint and the inside of the heel on the top foot. Now again, part of the fight and flight response is the quads on the front of the body. If you press with your big toe, we'll draw the knee away and give you a lovely stretch into the quad. Be careful if you've got low back pain. You don't want to lose the heel on the top foot. The heel on the top foot draws the long leg bone back into the socket, into the side of the waist. Maybe the head goes in the opposite direction to the knees. The tummy draws back towards the spine and the spine pulls back down to the floor. That's what pulls the knees back to center. And then we start the process again. Back of the ribs, back of the hips, feet. Remember that your breath is expansive, light and lifting, and your breath out invites the front of the body back into the spine, back into the floor. Press with the big toe joint to get that stretch in the front quad if that feels nice. Then come back to the heel. Drop that leg back into the socket and feel your spine. Feel the side of the waist. Tummy draws the spine back to the ground. We come back to centre. This is good. We're going to let the knees come in, give the knees a nice hug, have a little rock from side to side. This is good. We come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. And we're going to come up into our lovely square pose. So pad out as much as you need to. So if you need a blanket under your knees, have a blanket under your knees. If you need a blanket under your wrists, do that too. Whatever feels nice. So we start with the feet. And we feel like the big toe joints can be pulled towards the wall behind you. If you press with the top of the feet will cramp. So we just feel that the big toe joints get pulled away towards the wall behind you. And that opens the front of the ankle, softens the front of the ankle, softens the shin. And the sit bones go back a little bit because we don't want to be kneeling in the knees. We want the body weight to be down through the shins. So we've got these lovely skis on the back of the body, and that's where your body weight is falling. We spend a lot of time forwards in the hands, and that brings the body weight into the knees, but actually we pick up the pelvis and we take that back towards the wall behind us. Remember those pop stud ribs? Pop stud of the ribs goes back in towards the spine, and then we've got no soggy middle. You can have the hands a little bit further forward than the shoulder line if that helps. And the pointy parts of the elbows always looking back towards the thighs. That helps to drop the shoulders away from the ears. And we can breathe here. So again, remember, we breathe into that concertina of the ribs. The ribs go outwards and back towards the spine. So we breathe. And we feel the undulation of the spine. And this is where cat pose comes from. Again, we get very caught up in the doing. And we think we need to lift and drop the spine. But actually, if we just breathe, you can feel the natural lift of the spine. The breath out brings the front of the body back in towards the back of the body. We breathe out and the spine extends. And this may be a little different than you've experienced in any other classes. We get very excited about pulling the belly back in towards the spine, but actually the breath does that naturally for you. And we're looking at spinal undulation rather than toning core muscles today. So find the inside of your feet, big toes, inside of the heels. Make sure the heels haven't flopped out to the sides. The more we get the pull through the big toe joints, the more release we get at the hip. And it's just like our bridge pose, we've just changed orientation to the floor. That the hips can now tilt easily, and we've got space into the low spine. Can we touch in with each individual vertebrae in the low spine? Can we make the back of the pelvis very, very heavy? The legs, or the realm of the legs, will just take you to the underside of the ribs. That's the hands that look after the low ribs. So if you point with your index fingers, we feel that we can touch in with the low ribs up to the shoulder blades. We get that nice lift and drop. Can we touch in with each individual vertebrae there? It's a spinal exploration. Can we create space? Again, as part of our stress response, muscles get tight. They start to pull the body to make it small because we don't know whether we need to fight, run away or freeze. So we start to pull the muscles a little bit tighter than is useful. So touching in with the spine, can we encourage each individual vertebrae to move independently of its neighbour? That creates space, and then that allows for fluid flow. And we need that. So can we touch in with each individual vertebrae through the chest? Between the shoulder blades, yes, is the pull of the hands down into the ground, and that's a pull down into the ground, not a press away from the ground. And then could we wrap the jaw around the back of the head, because the back of your head is connected between your shoulder blades. This is good. So play with this as much as you like. When you need to rest, you just simply come back. We slide the sit bones back like we slide back the old chair in the car. You know, when you pull up the bar underneath you and you slide the seat back. Same thing. This brings us into our child pose. Doesn't matter where you get to, as long as the spine is still extending. This is not a collapse pose. So we've still got our sit bones like they're going to touch the wall behind you. Arms still wrapped around the ribs. It's spinal extension. And again here, breathing into that broadness of the ribs. The breath out pulls the front of the body into the back of the body. We feel the ground more. This is good. So we float back into our lovely square pose. If you're happy here working with your spine exploration, if you're happy here working with your cat, then that's fine. If you want to tuck the toes under, a little bit like the cat padding the cushions. Toes don't like to be sat on, so allow them to be introduced to the ground. We can create lovely circles here. Circles with the toes, circles with the balls of the feet. 108 articulating facets in your feet. And they all want to be sliding and gliding. And if you're looking at your feet going, that's perfectly normal. We've got that lovely snooker ball heel. It's nice and heavy. We can make circles with the snooker ball heel. Works into the ankles. And this just prepares the ground for something that we might call dog pose. And again, we don't push the floor away, we don't need to. So you might find that one foot, the heel can get pulled down towards the ground. And the other heel can get pulled down towards the ground, which lifts the knee off the ground, takes the sit bones back. And if we keep pulling the feet down into the ground, it's going to turn us into this lovely downward dog posture. Can we make circles with the heels, circle with the knee, circle with the elbows, circle with the shoulder blades? Can we find our cat pose in our dog pose? Can we touch in with each individual vertebrae? So our dog pose is very little about straightening the legs. We're not so interested in that. What we are interested in is how do we change our mind from pushing the floor away to being pulled down into the ground, letting the tensional networks fire, and that causing a posture that we would call dog pose. These are your exploratory movements with your washy breath. Rest in your child pose when you need to. This is good. So we're coming back down to the ground. We're going to take the knees as wide as the mat. Big toe joints coming down into the ground, and we take the sit bones back towards the wall behind you. This So just working back into the hips. We've still got those lovely hands connected into the ground. We point with the index fingers and we've got lovely circly movement with the elbows. And then we just take the hands forward to wherever is good. Remember that we're breathing into the chest, that lovely broad breath of the ribs. Let the tummy sink back on the out breath. And then bringing the hands in towards you. We're going to bring the knees in. And we tuck the toes under. The heels get pulled down into the ground. The hands stay close to you. We pull the heels down into the ground. It takes us into something that looks a bit like a forward bend. Takes us through to standing. And if the knees are grumpy here, then we just come up to standing however you like. But it's feeling that center of the foot, that front part of the heel that pulls down into the ground, creates space in the ankles, space in the knees, space in the hip. Can we make circles with the knees here? Maybe the elbows go above the knees. We can look forwards. Just allows everything to rebalance in the body. And then from there, feet get pulled down into the ground and the pelvis starts to come forwards. And the head starts to come up. Now we know that your head and your pelvis are talking to each other all the time. So as the pelvis comes forwards, the head comes back. And we stand up without knees. It's an effortless effort as we get pulled down into the ground. We don't need to push the floor away. And we feel the feet here. So if you feel at any point during the day that you feel that it's all getting a bit much, you're hearing things and you're seeing things in our environment that are causing us a bit of stress, then this mountain pose is possibly the most useful tool you can have. We feel the feet, behind the balls of the feet, through into the heels. Now we all have a tendency to stand, whether it's back in the heel or forwards in the toes, it doesn't matter. But when the knees are locked out, we are disconnected from the ground. We can't feel our environment, or the brain can't interpret the messages that are coming back from the feet as well as it would like to. So we take the knees out of the game, we make the knees nice and soft. And we feel toes and heels. And just this gentle rocking backwards and forwards that activates central core. You feel the lift of the pelvic floor, maybe a bit of a drop in the back of the pelvis. And we feel that lovely upward lift into our solar plexus. And this changes the game for us because this helps to switch off all those stressy chemicals. We feel that deep connection to the ground, that taproot that comes out of the front of the snooker ball heel and goes deep down into the earth. Mountains are built of the earth, they're not balanced on it, and we are exactly the same. We're born down into the ground by gravity. We don't balance on the ground. We're part of it. Those concentric circles of gravity that pull down through us. And this helps our spine extend. And the head comes up towards the sky. So you can do this while you're boiling your kettle. You're waiting for your toast to pop. You're grilling fish fingers. Or whatever it is that you're doing. And we just feel. Notice how you feel. The breath can wash in, that lovely expansive, light, lifting breath. And the breath can come out that sinks the front of the body into the back of the body. You might find that the in-breath takes you forwards into the toes, and the out-breath drops you back into the heel. And these aren't a doing, they're just a feeling. So you might feel that quite strongly, you might not feel it at all. There might be a lot of movement into the toes, there might be not a lot of movement at all. And everything is fine, there is nothing that is wrong. This is good. So from here, it's a great one to do in the supermarket. You feel the toes and the heels. You breathe in, taking your arms up. Remember that your arms wrap around your ribs. So there's lots of space at the shoulder, the ribs lift. And you breathe out and you point with your index fingers out, round and down. You feel the jaw come back at the end of the out breath. Takes the head back into the gravity line. We breathe in. And we breathe out. Final time, we're going to breathe in. And we breathe out. This helps to deeply connect you into the ground. So from here, we're going to shift the body weight ever so slightly into the right foot. So as you breathe in, we're going to take the left knee in towards you. You can go with the arms as well if that feels nice, or if you're just concentrating on the leg, you can do that too. So you're breathing in. The arms wrap around the ribs and lift the waist, but the foot is being pulled down into the ground. When we breathe out, we'll go out to the side and back down. We're going to swap to the other side. Left foot pulled down into the ground. Right knee comes in. And we breathe out, out to the sides. We feel that nice stretch in the hips. So we go in two directions. Pulled down into the ground and pulled up into the sky, equal measure. You'll feel the tummy muscles kick in. Remember that your arms start at your solar plexus. So do your legs. And it's just a breathing. Feel your feet down into the ground. We hang the legs from underneath the solar plexus. This is good. Final time. We can come back to center. Fab. Just giving the legs a nice shake. Giving the shoulders a nice roll. So the lovely shoulders, the beginning part of our fight and flight response. So we perceive something that's a bit scary. And that can be anything from a challenging email to a phone call to hearing something on the news. The head comes forward, the shoulders come up. It's our natural response. We want to hide our vital organs, so the ribs go in, the knees go in, and we start to make ourselves small. That's how it works. So when we want to come out of that, we work from the top of the body. We feel the hands, and we've got lovely pointy parts of the elbows. So when you breathe in, elbows go out to the sides. Probably better if I show you this way. Elbows go out to the sides. Shoulder blades roll up towards the ears. That lovely breath in. We need that broadness on the back of the ribs. We want a broad back of the ribs. Big smile. We've got 3 smiles in the body. One is at your bottom. Always a winner. One is on the back of your ribs. One is on the back of your head. Big, broad smiles. And we want to broaden the breathing smile as much as we can. So you breathe in. You feel the shoulder blades lift. When you breathe out, elbows roll back in towards the side of your body, which lets the collarbones slide off the edges of the shoulders. We breathe out. Ribs are drawn back towards the spine. Tummy draws back towards the spine, so we don't drop into the low spine. And then we can breathe. And you go at your own. I've just realised I'm doing my own breath. So everybody's breath length is different. Don't start going blue. Just follow your own breath, follow your own roll of the ribs. Slide and glide of the shoulder blades, roll of the collarbones. For those of you that are long-term yoga practitioners, you might find there's a pause at the end of the out and at the end of the in breaths. It's not a pushing or a forcing, it's a natural pause that happens there to just allow the body to soften and soften and soften a little more. And we're not going to do that too much here today, but it is a practice. So we feel the rotation of the arms. And remember, your bone arm connects you to your shoulder. Your connected tissue arm takes you through the shoulder into the front of the body. So the palm of your hand connects into the front of your chest, tummy muscles, pubic bone, back of the hand takes you through the shoulder, down this back of the body into the lumbosacral fascia, back of the pelvis. Also encompasses your head. So it's a body-wide event. It's a spine-wide event, spine-freeing event. This is good. So final time, we're dropping back to the center. This is good. We're coming back down into our feet. So these movements help to get the head back into the gravity line, also help to release the muscles at the side of the neck and the shoulders, help to start to switch off that fight and flight response. Your breath is your most powerful tool. When we get worried about something, all the breath goes into the upper third of your chest, and we start breathing like this. To take these deep breaths that are bringing you back into the lungs, back into the smile of the ribs, starts to switch off that cortisol, adrenaline response. It's really important that we can access that when we need it, to notice what your body is up to and to be able to work with it to bring it back into balance. It's okay for us to be stressed for short period of times. It's not okay for us to be stressed for long periods of time. This is good. So we're going to take the feet a little bit wider than hip width apart. It doesn't need to be massive, just a place where you can still feel the outer edges of your feet, long little toe side, inside of the heel and the big toe joint. We've got these lovely spreading toes. Again, notice your body weight between the heels and the toes. Where does your body weight fall? Can you make circles with the knees? It's a bit Elvis-y. Or surfery, depending on which age group we're working with this morning. My daughter doesn't know who Elvis is. That makes me feel really old. Never mind. So we've got these lovely circles here. The hips don't move, hips stay still, because again, our foot can move independently of the shins, shin can move independently of the thigh, and the thigh can move independently of the pelvis. And it might be easier on one side than it is on the other. Can we create space? And it's important that we can find this. Big toe joint lifts through the inside of the leg into the pelvic floor, lifts us out of the waist, gives us space in the hips. And we want space in the hips. We want core strength, we want space in the hips. We're talking about core strength on Saturday in our lovely workshop. So we feel outer edges of the feet. And that lovely spaciousness into the joints. I'm going to go sideways, but you ladies stay there. So outer edges of the heels get pulled down into the ground. We don't lose the arch of the foot. We've never got flat feet. We've always got an arch of the foot, and we've always got very, very active feet. We can always wiggle the toes. We can always lift the heel if we need to. From here, just like with your cat pose, we've got this lovely, and your bridge pose, we've got this lovely pelvic tilt. And if you're not sure, get your hands in there. We feel that lovely length into the low spine, and then we can invite the sacrum into the base of the spine, into the low spine. We get this lovely undulation. It helps us to feel the tummy drawing back towards the spine. Sit bones just start to go back towards the wall behind you. Make sure you're not pitching back into, not dropping back into the heels, not pitching forwards into the toes. We've got a lovely upward lift. Still space, always space. Hands around the top of the thighs, something like that, maybe around the knees. From here, because the inside of your thighs are one of the prime drivers for your fight and flight response. We just feel like we've got a nice, maybe a tray of drinks on the back of the pelvis, something like that. We all need a gin, don't we? Even though it's very, depending on when you're watching this, for us it's 20 past 10 in the morning, so it's not quite gin o'clock yet. We want that lovely stretch on the inside of the thigh. But we feel that the feet get pulled down into the ground, so we get this lovely up and over movement. We're not pushing the floor away, which loads the knees. We've got the tummy that slides back into the back of the pelvis, and we can get this lovely stretch. You might find that one side's tighter than the other. That's quite normal. You just work with what you have. Feet. Breathing. And then we're going to come back to the centre. We press down into the feet, pelvis tilts under, and we can just roll back up. And then we're heels and toes, heels and toes, heels and toes, all the way back into the centre. And we can give the legs a nice shake. This is good. Good, good, good. So we're going to come down to sitting. Come down any way that you like. If you like your squat pose, you can come down through squat pose. If the knees are grievous, you find your way down exactly the way that you like. If you need blocks to sit on, you can have blocks to sit on. If you're at home and you've got a lovely sofa that you can have at your back, you can do that too. Whatever helps you to feel comfortable. We keep the knees bent, keep the knees as soft as you need them to be, so that the long leg bones can come back through the hips and connect into the deep waist. Heels get pulled down into the ground. Sit bones get pulled down into the ground. The art of sitting is exactly that. It's an art. It never wants to be a flop pose. And also, you know, it doesn't want to be sinking down into the ground. It doesn't be pushing the floor away either. We've got those lovely heavy snooker ball heels. We've got heavy, heavy sit bones that get pulled down into the ground that really help the tummy to sink back into the deep waist. It lifts us in the underside of the diaphragm, gives something for the shoulders to sit on, and allows the head to come back into the deep line, into the gravity line. This is good. So from here we can breathe and soften. As I say, for many of us, we breathe into the upper part of the body a little bit too much for our liking, so we will always want to be breathing into the ribs here. And we just bring the right foot in towards you. Now the foot can stay on the inside of the knee if it wants to, or if you're a little bit further on or the hips are happy, you can take the foot to the outside of the knee, whatever feels nice. Feet still get pulled down into the ground though. Sit bones still get pulled down into the ground though. We've still got both sit bones present on the ground. The arms, remember the arms wrap around your ribs, keeps you, you know, we never reach with the arm out of the socket. It's a spine wide event, ribs wide event. So from here we can find that lovely upward lift from underneath the ribs. Left hand goes around the right knee. Maybe the other hand goes around the back. But from here, hands get pulled into whatever they're touching so that they reconnect into the ribs. Legs get drawn back into the sockets, feet down into the ground. Legs get pulled back into the sockets. So it's a body-wide event, spine-wide event. Your breath, again, always coming back into the breath. So we allow the body to meet the pose where it wants to, not where the brain thinks it should. That's yoga. Get past the thinky bits in the front of the mind. I should be here, I should be further on, I should be. It's all shoulds. It's not. It's disrespectful to our body to be that way. So we feel that. And actually, when we work with our body rather than against it, a lot of the time what we find is that the body gives you far more range than you've been used to, because you're not pushing and pulling it around. We come back to the centre, we're going to change over sides. And it's the left foot that comes in this time. We're not symmetrical. I've definitely said that before. We're not symmetrical, we're asymmetrical. So we never expect to have the same result on a different side, because we have different sides of the body. Might be similar, certainly not the same. So again, have the foot on the inside of the knee if that's comfortable, have the foot on the outside of the knee if that's comfortable. You find where is right for you. Ask your body, see what the response is. Again, can we find both sit bones? Can we find the broadness into the ribs? Yoga postures become an exploration of ourselves, exploration of the tissues, exploration of range. We can breathe into the shoulders. Notice where the breath doesn't want to go. Notice where you run into tension. And can you just go in there and be soft? Can we go in there with the breath and create space? Can we go in there with gravity? Maybe a gravity button underneath the hip creates more space in the front of the hip. Maybe a gravity button underneath the hand pulls the hand down into the ground, makes more space into the shoulder. It's all about creating space in the body. And when there's space, there's relaxation. When there's relaxation, then the stresses switch off. And come back to the centre. This is good. So find yourself, however you need to be so that you can sit with your spine tall. Whether that's with a sofa at your back or some blocks underneath you. And you can have your legs straight out in front or your legs folded in towards you. For any of you that work with me a long time, I'm a serial collapser, so I just fold the legs in and... So we all have our favourite places to be. But again, we want to feel that draw down into the ground. We want the pelvis is the pot, flower pot, and we grow our spine out of that. So your pelvic alignment is the key here. So we just want to be nice and comfortable so that we can feel our breathing. We bring the hands onto the tummy. And we can breathe. And you notice the breath in allows the tummy to expand into the hands. Maybe the fingertips separate slightly. And the breath out draws the tummy back towards the spine. And we feel the low spine will lengthen a little bit on that out breath. And we're not pushing or forcing the breath down into the tummy. It's just an encouragement, a notion of. This is good. And on the next out breath, we're just taking the hands up. Turn sideways slightly. In an ideal world, fingers around the side of the ribs, thumbs at the back. But if that's not comfortable, you just put the back side of your hands around your ribs, and the shoulders might be a little bit more comfortable. It's quite extreme on the wrists. Maybe if the wrists are a little bit tight, but you find what's right for you. It's not the compromise of the head, it's not the compromise of the shoulders. So let the thumbs just feel the back of the ribs, because we want to breathe into our thumbs. We want to breathe into the palms of the hands. So again, we're going for that big smile on the back of your ribs. And expanding into that dome of the lungs in the back of the body. So I've said this before, I'll say it again, there's no lungs in the front of your chest. It's all heart, it's all pericardium, it's the heart tent, it's all that. So your lungs don't actually start until the kind of the outer side front of your chest, and then the rest of it's all covered underneath the bones. So we're breathing into those thumbs on the back of the body, feeling like there's a dome shape of the lungs that happens on the back. The breath out drops the shoulders away from the ears quite strongly and brings the ribs back towards the spine. There's not much happening on the front of the chest. Hello, my lovely. Have you got a question? Oh, you have to go.
Sorry, Kath, I've got a client, I've got to go.
That's okay, no problem. Take care, my lovely.
I'll register. Thank you.
Bye, love. This is good. And then final movement. Just bring the hands up onto the front of the chest, up onto the collarbones, fingertips up here. Can we breathe and feel that the fingertips can roll underneath the fingers? The breath out feels like the collarbones can slide off the edges of the shoulders, and at the end of that breath, the jaw then goes back into the back of the head, creates space at the neck. You might find that the shoulders shrug up towards the ears on the in-breath. Collarbones slide out towards the edges of the shoulders on the out-breath. Have a couple of breaths here. And then just allow your breath to return to normal, if you can find normal, because we've been messing around with the breath, so the brain goes, what's normal? And just feel your body for a moment, feel your breathing. If it's nice to close the eyes or just look at the floor in front of you, then do. Notice the wash of the breath, the in-breath, down into the pelvis, down into the feet, the out-breath washes back up through the inside of the spine. Notice how your body feels from when you started. This is good. You've worked hard today. Go gently with yourselves. Hopefully that feels a little better. And thank you so much for joining me.